I thought he'd always obey me, but one drunken mistake at the club changed that forever.
You know, sometimes us women tend to think that we are superior or we have dominated our partners just because we are earning more than them, or we are doing a better job than them. We tend to forget our roles as women in our partners' lives and act like we were the one wearing pants in marriage or relationships. My husband was nonchalant as ever. At least that's what I had thought. I thought I had the upper hand in our marriage, but what he did to me for my small mistake, it would be hard to forget. I got off my high horse quickly. Everything just went downhill for me. I guess karma never forgets to visit the wrongdoers, right? Jake, my husband, male 36, and I, female 36, started dating 7 years ago. We were 29 years old at that time. We had gone to a church camp that took place in Cranmore Hall, East Cranmore, Shepton Mallet, UK. While we had met during church camps a few times, we would speak here and there, but we were not close. We started getting close during a summer church camp. We would spend more time together and even share our food. Jake was a very funny guy. He was a very calm person and relaxed. We dated for a couple of months through telephonically and our twice-a-month meeting plan. It was very hard having to not see your partner whenever we wanted to. We only communicated through social media and phone calls. The following year, he said to me that he was going to the University of London, which was heartbreaking for me. The way he was so chilled when I told him my fears of him going to University of London, but he was just nonchalant about the whole situation. He proposed before he went to university. We got married when he was still doing his internship. I was the happiest woman on earth. We moved to our new home 2 months after we got married. We were living the life of those who only dream about it. My husband was not a romantic guy. He was just boring, but I loved him like that. I had my own law firm, which was dealing with family matters. I loved my work so much, but it somehow became a weapon to destroy me. As time passed, our relationship started being more about Jake and not me. He was very nonchalant when it came to my feelings. Staying with him was no longer fun, and our intimate moments were no longer the same. Jake didn't care about anything rather than himself. Jake became a self-centered person who had an ego for days. I remember when I first had to visit him at work. Well, more like I was missing some action, and there's a phrase that says, "It's a lot more nicer when done in the office, especially on top of the office table." So I took those words and went to see my hubby only to be surprised. I found him busy trying to push a girl who was busy seducing him, but his Johnson was standing like a stretch tent. I couldn't believe it, you know. I confronted him about it, and guess what he said? He just pinned everything on me. He told me that I was pranking him and I had bought the underwear to pin it on him. The guy didn't even try to apologize. Instead, he blamed me for everything. When I asked him to put his ego aside and learn to take responsibility for his actions, he told me that he won't apologize for something he never did and didn't even know about. Every time when we would argue, he would always find a way to put blame on me and not apologize when he's wrong. I would apologize, you know, just for the sake of maintaining peace between us. I loved Jake a lot, but his ego was somehow getting to me to a point that I would sometimes think of getting out of the relationship. But I would rethink my decision because I loved him so much. And I had never seen myself with anyone else except for him, but the way he was doing things made me wonder if being consistent in this relationship was worth my happiness. I was no longer happy with Jake. My friends would advise me to get out of the relationship and find someone better. Maybe I should have listened to them earlier. I was working as a family attorney for a couple of years until I started my own law firm and a construction company on the side. Jake was working in a bank as a chartered accountant, and things started changing when my businesses started growing. Well, more like I changed, I became this lady with a big ego. I forgot that before my businesses started being a thing, Jake was there for me all the way. Even though he was a bit of an ass with his nonchalant ego, but he supported me through it all. I started making my own things despite Jake's approval. I was too big for my own boot. I was making my own rules and living my own life like I was not married. So one day I decided to go to a club with my girls. I know that they didn't like Jake for their own reasons. Ever since Jake and I started dating, my friends were just against our relationship. So I resorted to spending time with my girls most of the time, going out, having a few drinks, and socializing. Well, I was not a person who liked socializing, but the more I went out with the girls, I got introduced to the alcohol kind of fun. I learned to socialize with strangers. If my husband wasn't the ass that he was most of the time, I wouldn't have time to even go out and socialize with strangers because he would be there with me, you know. What I was doing to Jake felt like I was paying back for all the times that he would act like a god in my life and trying to control my life. One of my girls was going to have a birthday party at one of the clubs. Obviously, I was invited. I needed to go out and remove my mind from what had been going on that week, so it was going to be a great distress treat for me. The girl that I was friends with once called me and told me that she was hosting her birthday party at the club that weekend, so I was like, why not? She then told me to bring a +1 because everyone would be bringing their partners. You know, I never thought much about who held the power in my marriage. I always assumed it was me. I was the one with a successful career, the one who made all the decisions, the one who seemed to have everything under control. My husband Jake was more laid back, more easygoing. He had his hobbies and his friends, but when it came down to it, it was me who wore the pants in our relationship. At least that's what I thought. It was a Friday night, and Mark and I had decided to go out to a club with some friends. I had picked out my outfit carefully, wanting to look my best, wanting to show off to everyone around me. Mark, as usual, just grabbed the first thing he saw in his closet and threw it on. As we danced and drank and laughed with our friends, I found myself feeling a sense of power and control. I was the one leading the conversation, the one making decisions about what drinks to order, the one setting the pace for the night. But then I made a small mistake. I caught Jake's eye as I was dancing with a group of our friends, and I could see that he looked a little bored. Without thinking, I turned to him and said, "Why don't you go grab us some more drinks, babe?" I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just asking him to do something simple, something that would benefit both of us. But as I watched him walk away to the bar, I started to feel a sense of unease creeping into my chest. When he returned with our drinks, he handed me mine with a smile, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. It was a mixture of amusement and something else, something that made me feel like he knew something that I didn't. So I excused myself and told Jake that I was going to the ladies' room. I was a bit tipsy. Well, not a bit, but I was sloshed. When I was on my way to the ladies' room, I bumped into this handsome fella. I found out that he was actually a fan of my work. We talked and got to know each other. He introduced himself as David. The young man was very attractive. David and I kissed. We were tipsy from the alcohol we had drank since we had moved our conversation to the bar area. I had even forgotten that I was going with my husband at that party, and everyone from the group that we were with, they were minding their own business. Things escalated to a point that we ended up being intimate. We went to the men's restroom and did it in one of the toilet rooms. I know it was wrong of me, but I couldn't help it. I mean, Jake was no longer doing it the way he was doing it before. It was like his ego and nonchalant behavior had somehow gotten into his head, and it was making him look like a crazy person or a person with bipolar disorder. He was very calm, but when he got angry, even the house would be on fire. So I would always try by all means to keep the peace between us. On the other hand, David was making me feel completely happy, and he knew how to take responsibility for his actions. David knew how to apologize when he was wrong and would make sure that he takes the blame as it is. I didn't know that in my relationship with Jake, the last time Jake had uttered the word, "I'm sorry." Instead of doing that, he would either deny or shift the blame on me or someone else. He didn't have the guts to say, "I'm sorry." Spending time with David made me feel at ease. I felt a sense of belonging, and he understood me and my needs. I know I shouldn't have fallen for a person I called a friend, but I couldn't help it. David had once confessed his love for me before, but I was so much in love with Jake, so I kept rejecting him and told him that I didn't see him in that manner. But I saw him as a brother and a best friend that I had ever had since we grew up together. But I guess the phrase that says, "marry your best friend," was somehow true. Well, because I never really believed in such phrases. I only believed in my heart that if it loves someone, we can be in love with them or even marry them. Jake asked where I was coming from. Obviously, I lied and said I was at a friend's house, and besides, I was old enough to go wherever I wanted to go without anyone's permission. He just looked at me and said, "Okay." Then he told me to wear something nice because we were going to a club. I tried to protest, but he was insisting that we go to the club just to unwind because we are both always busy with work. I knew that I was not going to win with him, so I obliged and went to prepare for the night ahead. We went to a club with some friends. I had a few too many drinks and my inhibitions were lowered. I started dancing with a stranger, a handsome and charming man who knew all the right moves. Jake tried to intervene, but I brushed him off, thinking I was in control. But as the night wore on, I realized I had made a mistake. The stranger was not who I thought he was, and I found myself in a compromising position. Michael saw the whole thing and was furious. I tried to downplay it, to tell him it was no big deal, but he was having none of it. For the first time in our marriage, he stood up to me. Well, not the first time, but it was the first time since I started getting more money than him and my businesses were booming, his anger and hurt palpable. "You humiliated me," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You disrespected me in front of our friends, in front of strangers. I can't take it anymore." I was taken aback. I had never seen Jake like this before. I realized too late that I had underestimated him. that he was not the pushover I thought he was. The days that followed were tense and uncomfortable. Jake and I barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only to argue. I tried to apologize, to explain that I had made a mistake, but he wasn't having it. "You've been walking all over me for years," he said, his voice cold and detached. "You've been treating me like a doormat ever since you've been the *T, and your business started booming. You have changed to a point that you even forgot who you are. You are driven by arrogance and money. Now you think that you are all that, and I'm sick of it." I was taken aback by his words. I had never intended to hurt him, to make him feel small. But as I looked back on our relationship, I realized that he was right. I had been dominating him, controlling him, and I hadn't even realized it. Jake's nonchalant demeanor shattered, and he expressed his pain and anger to me. He felt betrayed and humiliated. I apologized profusely and begged for his forgiveness, but Jake couldn't bring himself to forgive me. He broke up with me and moved out of our apartment, which I think was a bit too much. He shouldn't have moved out, you know. I was heartbroken and filled with regret. I realized thinking that I was dominant more than my husband had been a huge mistake. One day, Jake came home from work early. He had a strange look in his eye, a look that made me feel uneasy. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I've been thinking about how you've treated me all these years, and I've come to a realization." "What's that?" I asked, my heart racing. "I'm not going to take it anymore," he said, his eyes glinting with fierce determination. "I'm going to stand up for myself, even if it means standing up to you." He said a lot of things, but what caught my attention was when he told me that he knew about David and I. He laughed and told me that he couldn't believe that I had been timing him and I had gone against my wedding vows. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had never seen Jake like this before. He had been controlling and what's not before, but he had never been this, I don't know what I can say, but it wasn't my Jake, and it scared me. I realized too late that I had underestimated him, that he was not the weak and submissive partner I had thought he was. The only thing I wanted to do was to pay back all those times that he was controlling me, but I guess everything backfires if you are not careful. Jake's words hung in the air, a challenge and a warning. I felt a surge of anger and defensiveness, but I tried to keep my cool. I knew I had to tread carefully to avoid making things worse. "Jake, let's talk about this," I said, trying to sound calm and reasonable. "I know I've made mistakes and I'm sorry, but let's not throw away our marriage over one mistake." Jake laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. "One mistake?" he repeated. "You've been making mistakes for years and I've been covering for you, but not anymore." He turned and walked away, leaving me feeling shocked and scared. I realized that I had underestimated the depth of his hurt and anger. The days that followed were tense and uncomfortable. Jake and I barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only to argue. I tried to reach out to him, to apologize and make amends, but he shut me down at every turn. I was starting to realize that I had lost control of our relationship. Jake was no longer the submissive partner I had thought he was, and it scared me. One night I came home from work to find that Jake had changed the locks. I was locked out of our house, and he refused to let me in. "What's going on?" I demanded, pounding on the door. "Let me in." "I'm taking back control," Jake said, his voice cold and detached. "You've had your chance to dominate me, and now it's my turn." I was shocked and scared. I had never intended for things to go this far. I was stunned. I had never thought that Jake would take such drastic measures. I realized too late that I had pushed him too far, and now he was fighting back. I tried to reason with him, to convince him to let me in, but he refused. I was left standing on the porch, feeling helpless and defeated. As the night wore on, I realized that I had no choice but to leave. I went to a hotel, feeling lost and alone. The next day, I tried to contact Jake, but he ignored my calls and messages. I was starting to realize that I had lost him, that he was no longer the man I thought I knew. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I was forced to move on, to start a new life without Jake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a grave mistake, that I had underestimated the man I loved. One day I received a package in the mail. Inside I found a note from Jake. "You thought you dominated me," it read. "But I was just biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You should have treated me with respect, with love. Now it's too late." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that Jake had been planning his revenge all along. I was shocked and devastated by Jake's note. I had never intended to hurt him, to dominate him. I had thought I was in control, but really I was the one who had been blind. I tried to contact Jake again, to apologize and make amends, but he was gone. He had moved on, started a new life without me. As I was busy scrolling through my phone, going through social media, there was something that had caught my attention. When I saw Jake's Facebook post and Instagram, I saw that he had posted some girl but hid her face and wrote, "The only one who would never betray me and take my love for granted" on his caption. That truly broke my heart. I mean, how he could move on a few weeks after he divorced me. Isn't he supposed to be healing before moving on? A lot was ringing in my head. I had thought Jake was an honest guy. So how come he had moved on a few weeks after our breakup and even posted her on social media? Was I a fool this whole time? I kept asking myself if she was the girl that had left underwear at his apartment once upon a time, and when I asked about it, he changed everything and put the blame on me, saying that I was pranking him. Why does it still hurt so much to see that the person I had spent 5 years with had replaced me within the blink of an eye? The way he was doing things, it was like he wanted to make me jealous or see my reaction towards the situation. While on the other hand, I had got an engagement party invitation from David. I knew there and then that my life was doomed. Karma had got my address very quickly. It's sometimes heartbreaking how unfair life is. I mean, I cheated on Jake with David, while David also cheated on his girlfriend, but I was the only one feeling the wrath of the abomination. David lived his happy life with his partner while mine was falling apart. During that time, I was still in pain and trying to go through everything, like trying to deal with the best way I knew how. So as I was keeping myself busy by going through social media, I logged onto Twitter, and guess what I saw? A moment of me and David at his flat doing the shameful act. I was drunk, so I don't really remember some events that took place, but when I saw the video, my world came crumbling down. I tried checking who had posted it, but the person had created a fake account to tarnish my image and reputation. I suspected David for the video, but when I would come to think of it, I told myself that David valued our friendship so much for him to humiliate me like that. My mind also drifted to Jake. I mean, he was the only person that I had cheated on, and he managed to move on a few days after our breakup. I had thought that maybe he was doing that to spite me. I mean, he managed to gloat and post his new girlfriend on social media, knowing very well that I would see the posts. Only a hurting heart would take a drastic decision like that. Another thing I didn't know was that David's flat had cameras, and he didn't even bother to notify me about them. Or maybe it was his plan, David's, to record everything that we were doing in his flat so that he would post it on Twitter. My mind was all over. I didn't even know who to blame and who to suspect, because I even thought of David's girlfriend, thinking maybe she had bugged the camera in David's flat for some reason, and she decided to create a fake account to demonize my dignity and image. That one really took away all my surviving energy and left me empty. I then decided to just switch off my phone and put it in a place where I knew I wouldn't find it while I was going through the phase. And come to think of it, David had once confessed his undying love for me, asking me to give him a chance in my life and how much he won't disappoint me. I rejected his request and confession, and now he has the nerve to sleep with me, then gloat about his relationship and engagement while my relationship had fallen apart. How unfair was that, mind you? I had developed some little feelings for David during all the times that I had been spending with him. Was it David's part of the plan to invite me to chill out, make me drunk, and then sleep with me? I felt truly violated about the video, mind you. David's face was not even showing, only me and the action that took place. I tried watching the video to try and remind myself what had really gone down that night, because the only thing I remembered was David and myself leaving the party and going to his flat to continue our mini party. As friends, of course, we got there and watched a movie while drinking. One minute we were laughing, doing crazy things, then another minute we were kissing. What happened next became blurry. It was like I was brainwashed. I felt like I was losing my mind and my sanity. I was slowly losing myself to a point that I would actually sleep with a bottle of gin to numb the pain and forget everything for a few hours. I wished to just sleep and never wake up when everything was over and I had healed. It was really a lot to take in. I didn't know that cheating on my nonchalant boyfriend would actually backfire this hard. I must admit that karma had hit me where it was hurting the mist. It was like salt was poured on a bleeding cut. That's how much hurt I was feeling. I spent, I think, 2 weeks, if not more, in the apartment. My friends even tried to call me, but I switched off my phone. I just disappeared from everything, my social life, social media, and even going out. I just stayed in the house and locked all the doors so that people would think there was no one in the house. My friends came over, they kept knocking and calling my name, but I ignored them until they decided to go. Weeks later, I had seen myself drowning in sorrows that I didn't even know who would come and rescue me. I felt like my soul was slowly leaving my body, the way things were. It was hard to handle all alone. So when I had gathered a little strength, I decided to call Jake and ask him about the video that was posted on social media. And to my surprise, he answered my call. I didn't even think he would because of how rough our breakup was. I thought he was still angry at me somehow. When he answered the call, he answered by saying, "I know you want to ask me about the video of you having fun with your so-called friend." My mouth went dry in an instant and got tongue-tied. When I recovered from what he had said, I asked him if he was the one who posted it and where he got the video. He just told me that, "You can never hurt a loving heart and think everything will be well. Karma always has a home to visit, and I guess it visited your address sooner." I couldn't believe it. I mean, he didn't confirm my speculations and he didn't even deny them, so my mind was suspecting him. I thought he loved me, but I guess I was wrong. Meaning the whole 5 years that we had spent together meant nothing to him. It was truly heartbreaking and depressing. Yes, I had fallen for what David was offering me that I had been missing in my relationship with Jake, but my heart didn't love him. I loved Jake, and my actions didn't only cost me a relationship and the person I loved, but I had also lost my self-respect. I lost the person who loved me for me and respected our relationship. Jake and I had goals and dreams for our relationship, and I guess all those dreams and goals went down the drain the day I committed abomination and betrayed Jake. I vowed to learn from my mistake and to never cheat on anyone again or try to dominate someone or my partner. I had realized that true love and respect are built on trust and fidelity. So I spent the next few months working on myself, trying to heal from the pain I had caused Jake and myself. Eventually, I met someone new who appreciated me for who I was. I had broken all my connections, David, after what we had done. I was no longer looking at him the same. When I looked at him, I would only see the betrayal that I had done to Jake, so I thought we were better off apart. I learned that it is important to be with someone who values and respects you, and that cheating is never the answer to problems in a relationship. But I had only one problem that I couldn't even move on from. I looked for Jake and Brandon, my current boyfriend. In some way, I'm still expecting him to change on me, just like how Jake did, and I acted like I was dominant to him. I lack trust. Not that I do not trust Brandon, but I am somehow insecure. I know that he has female friends and they respect our relationship, but I just can't bring myself to trust any of them. I came back to my senses when Brandon broke up with me, saying that our relationship was not what he thought it would be. To tell the truth, I got into a relationship with Brandon because I wanted to forget about Jake or David. I made the poor guy a rebound to escape the depressing state that I was in. I realized too late that I was still hung onto the past, so I needed to completely heal from everything. Try to find myself before I even think of moving on and be in a relationship. I was left alone, forced to confront the damage I had done. I realized too late that I had been selfish, arrogant, and cruel. I had destroyed the man I loved, and now he was gone. I spent months in a funk, unable to eat, sleep, or function. I had lost the love of my life, and it was all my fault. But as the months went by, I started to heal. I started to see a therapist, to work through my issues and my mistakes. I started to learn about healthy relationships, about mutual respect and love. And then one day I saw Jake. He was with his new woman, a woman who loved and respected him for who he was. I was happy for him, truly happy. I was forced to confront the harsh truth. My dominance was nothing more than a facade, a fragile illusion shattered by a single small mistake. And as I picked up the pieces of my shattered ego, I realized that true power lies not in control, but in trust, communication, and mutual respect. I then realized that I had been given a second chance, a chance to start over and do things right. I was grateful for the lesson, painful as it was. I walked away from the encounter with a newfound sense of humility and gratitude. I knew that I would never again take love for granted, never again try to dominate and control. I had learned the hard way that love is a two-way street, that it requires mutual respect, trust, and love. As for me, I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true dominance is not about exerting power over others, but about mastering oneself. And in that realization, I found a newfound sense of liberation, one that no amount of control could ever hope to achieve. So as I navigated my journey of healing, I realized that I had been living a life that was not true to myself. I had been trying to fit into a mold that society and my husband had created for me, and I had lost myself in the process. Because of money and success, I thought I was superior to others. I thought I was running the world, not knowing and realizing that I was losing myself in the process of everything. I really regret it. I wish I had done better, but hey, there is really no use crying over spilled milk, right? With the help of my therapist and my newfound self-awareness, I started to rediscover my passions and interests. I started taking art classes, joined a book club on my free days. I took them as a hobby and a source of healing. I was finally living the life I had wanted, and I felt empowered and free. As time passed, I bumped into Jake, and to my surprise, I didn't feel any sort of emotions or anything like the last time I saw him with his woman. So we greeted each other, and he asked me to join him as he was going to grab something to eat. Our conversation was solid and civil. He then told me that he was heartbroken by the separation and what had happened to our marriage, but he eventually realized that he had been just as responsible for the demise of our marriage. He had been so caught up in his career and controlling my life whenever he got a chance up until I raised and gave him a taste of his own medicine. He started therapy to work through his own issues, and I would say that he has changed for the better. I was really happy that he had finally realized that I was not the only problem in our marriage. As much as I had done the most cruel and unforgivable thing that ended our marriage, but he was actually the cause of everything. He was the root of my behavior. Yes, I should not be condoning what I had done, and I regret it every day, but the circumstances that I was facing had led me to resort to cheating and became dominant. I was not going to seek attention and affection outside our marriage if Jake was giving me enough time instead of being a control freak. I wouldn't have thought that I had to dominate him just when my businesses started making money. But despite everything that had been done, I finally managed to forgive myself and forgive Jake also. I also managed to get fair custody of my child. Yes, we had a child a year before everything changed, and that was the most refreshing and happy moment for me. Jake and I both found happiness on our own terms. One thing I vowed to embrace was getting a second chance with my child and be the best mother to him. I know that my story became a testament to the power of self-forgiveness and personal growth. I had learned that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to rise above one's mistakes and find strength in the process. Through my journey, I did not only rebuild my life, but I had also discovered a purpose far greater than I had ever imagined. Time passed, we were in contact with Mike, so we decided to force and confront our deepest fears and insecurities for the sake of our child, because the awkwardness that was happening between us was somehow getting into him. I took full responsibility for my actions, expressing remorse and pleading for forgiveness. I just need some tips and guides about life and relationships so that I wouldn't repeat the same mistakes when I decide to get into another relationship. Please help me.